It's been another turbulent season for the Montreal Canadiens, who finished the 2023-24 season outside the playoffs. While there were some encouraging signs from their younger players, the Habs still have the feeling of a team that's struggling to get out of first gear. So as they enter another critical offseason, it must be asked, what went wrong for the 2023-24 Montreal Canadiens? It's time for the Montreal Canadiens to have a serious look at head coach Marty St. Louis. His third year in Montreal as head coach was his best, but it was only a 74-point campaign with a .463 point percentage and a last place finish in the Atlantic once again. But are these results the fault of St. Louis, or just the fact that Montreal is still a team in a rebuilding phase? To me, it's a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, the Montreal Canadiens are one of the worst teams when it comes to holding leads after the first period, but one of the best when it comes to holding a lead after two periods. They're not a particularly good team at coming back from deficits after one or two periods, but they're a team that generally shows up for their games. They're a team that can execute their plan very effectively, but don't necessarily have a great answer when they get punched in the mouth early. They're also an incredibly undisciplined team, with the 5th highest penalties taken per 60 in the NHL. They have the 9th most bench minors on the year and the 10th most major penalties on the year, a mark of an incredibly undisciplined team. But on the other hand, I really like how St. Louis deploys his lines. He does a great job of getting the best line combinations out there the most often and sheltering his weaker lines from tougher competition. Marty St. Louis does some things very well, but he also does things pretty poorly. I honestly have no idea whether he's a good coach or not, but the Canadiens better figure it out quickly.
Listen up, fives. A 10 is speaking.
Montreal is a team with a lot of Robins, but no Batman. Nick Suzuki is their best offensive player, but he's not going to crack 35 goals or 80 points on the year. Cole Caulfield, who they paid a shit ton of money to last offseason, took a big step forward, but he's still not the alpha game changer that they might need. Mike Matheson is their best defenseman, but he's now on the wrong side of 30. Yuri Slafkovsky has exited the Nail Yakupov of number 1 overall bust, but he's still not an elite game changer like you would be hoping to get at that position. The fact that I can confidently say that 3 of their 4 best players took big steps forward this season, but Montreal still lacks firepower, is a bit of a worrying sign. I like a lot of the pieces that Montreal has, but they don't have that one guy that they need to get them over the hump, and I think this is the offseason they need to be aggressive and get him. Sam Montembeault ended up being your number 1 goaltender, and just as I predicted, he was aggressively mid, if I'm being generous. A .903 save percentage and a 3.14 GAA on the year. However, I will note that Sam Montembeault actually had a 1.22 goal saved above expected per 60, which actually indicates that his terrible stat line is more due to an absolutely abysmal defense in front of him rather than his own deficiencies as a goaltender. And after Jake Allen was shipped off to New Jersey, we actually got to see a fair bit of Caden Primo, the 24-year-old goaltender, who I thought was pretty solid in spots. A .910 save percentage and a GAA under 3. Hell, I think Montreal could do worse for a backup next year. The Canadiens were one of the more injured teams in the NHL this season, but they weren't at the top of that list. Among their key injuries this year, the big one was losing Kirby Dach to a knee injury just a few games into the season for the entire year, and they lost Chris Weidman for the entire season as well due to a back injury. Forward Christian Dvorak also missed half the season, and players like Alex Newhook, Tanner Pearson, David Savard, and Arbor Xhekaj also missed a good amount of time this year. The injuries were bad for sure, especially the one to Kirby Dach, but was that the main reason that the Canadiens missed out on making the playoffs? I don't really think so.
You think you're so damn special? I don't think I'm special. My mother always said I'm not special.
The Canadiens' special teams were actually pretty good, all things considering. They ranked 23rd in penalty kill with a 76% effectiveness, and their power play ranked 26th with just under an 18% success rate. And Nick Suzuki is actually top 20 in the NHL in power play goals this year, so that's something they got going for them.
Hell, I'm in. High five, dude.
Montreal was, no surprise, a pretty bad team at even strength. They were a 46.33 expected goal percentage at 5-on-5 and a 45.83 Corsi 4 at even strength. Their negative 24.22 expected goal differential at 5-on-5 was 6th worst in the NHL, and they actually scored higher than expected with a 16.22 goal differential above expected. But the bottom line is, as you would expect at even strength, the Montreal Canadiens were one of the worst teams in terms of controlling play and getting quality chances on net.
Don't make me fire you.
You can't fire me. You're acting manager, not office manager, so you have no firing powers.
For a team that's been in a rebuild for as many years as the Canadiens have, it's surprising that their prospect pool is only ranked 10th in the NHL. And also for a team so bad, they have a lot of salary cap space already tied up next year, about $60 million already committed to players on their roster, so there's not a whole ton of room for them to improve, and that includes having to give raises to Justin Barron and Arbor Jakash. Now, I will say that GM Ken Hughes did a great job navigating the whole Sean Monahan situation, getting 2 first-round picks for both acquiring him and then for trading him away. And as a result, the Canadiens actually have 6 picks within the first 3 rounds this year. So they have the ammunition to improve their team in that way. However, that bevy of picks has not yet borne fruit for the Canadiens over the last few years, as they only have 4 players from the last 5 drafts who have made a significant impact in the NHL, and only one of them, Cole Caulfield, can really be considered a foundational piece for this franchise. And Slafkovsky is on that trajectory, but he's not quite there yet. The Canadiens were just not an incredibly talented team. They had big holes in goal, and they don't have difference makers up front. Their back end is young and developing, and their bench boss is pretty questionable. It's not surprising that the Canadiens ended up being one of the worst teams in the NHL this year. Now, because of all that developing talent, there is some reason to hope for Canadiens fans that things will be getting better next year and in the years to come. But in all honesty, I think that the Canadiens team still needs a couple of major pieces if they want to get back into being competitive. Macklin Celebrini would be a huge coup for them, but they really need to nail this draft this year, or else this entire regime could be on its way out. Mon Dieu.